So for our next presentation, I'm pleased to introduce Ray Topping from Fiatech, who is working actually in a kind of different space, but illustrates the importance of bringing the various different actors together. So I'll let him talk a little bit about what he does.
Thanks, Ryan. This is my first time at the Design and Sustainability Symposium, so I appreciate the opportunity to be here and speak. I did go back and look at presentations from last year to get a feel for what I could talk on, and I'll try hard to stay in my 15 minutes. So I'm going to share views about sustainability and put forward some, I think, practical ways of advancing sustainability in design, and hopefully have some influence that you take away and can use that in your practices. I have a strong commitment to sustainability. I'm an engineer and I'm a designer. So I have a bachelor's in civil, a master's in environmental engineering. I've done engineering throughout my career. I was with Seach Hill for almost 30 years, ran the engineering design group globally, had 3,000 people working for me on 6 continents, everywhere except Antarctica. Have done about $250 billion worth of projects, and proud of all those projects, but continued, I'd say, in my career to mature and advance and drive more sustainability. I gave a presentation at Oregon State University earlier this week, Monday, on sustainability. That was about an hour. I wish I could give that one to you. Spoke of some of the major programs I worked on. I led the design for the London Olympic Park. It's about an $8 billion project. Hired all the designers, managed all the design. England made a strong commitment to sustainability and to have the most sustainable games ever accomplished, and you'll hear a lot about it. That really is being done in the most sustainable way. You can do an event that lasts 3 weeks and spends $20 billion, but very sustainable. Everything we did had a legacy element to it, to deconstruct afterward, drive meaningful use, building on some of the work that's been done in the past. Probably the best was done in Sydney. Examples like building the Olympic Village so that it's housing afterwards, and then fitting it temporarily for the games and removing all of it. So we're rebuilding a large part of eastern London in the Stratford area, about 640 acres, and doing some incredible things there, like all of the demolition was sorted and managed and all reused on the site except for the hazardous waste. So some really forward-looking things in sustainability. And I don't get to talk about much of that with you. So I'd like to ask, how many of you like change? Oh, good. So about half of you. That's about the largest percentage I've ever had, and I always raise my hand too, and then I think, well, I kind of like change, and well, sometimes, and not in every way, and I kind of like driving change for other people, and but yeah, I like change, and if we're going to do sustainability, we have to change, and it doesn't have to all be about sacrifice and living less satisfactorily. It's just really about doing things different and better, I'd say. So I hope I will leave you today with ideas about how to do that. And it is a monumental task. It's a huge task, and you can get overwhelmed by that, but we can take small steps and begin to do some things. So those steps then add up. And I'm reminded, I watched a videotape from Joel Barker. He was mentioned earlier today. He's a futurist, and he gave this example of a man that was walking along down the beach, and he was watching this fellow in front of him, and the fellow was picking something up and throw it in the ocean, and so he walks down to that man and says, looks at what he's doing. He's picking up a starfish on the beach and throwing it in the ocean, and it says to the guy, there are like thousands and thousands of starfish along the beach here, and they're all beached and dying, and like, why are you throwing them in the ocean? And he said, well, I'm trying to save them, and I just pick them up and throw them in. And the gentleman says, well, you can't save all of them. There are 1,000 of them. He said, yeah, but I helped that one. And I think sustainability is kind of like that. If we start with, it's good we're working on the big issues. They take a lot of energy and time, but let's make a difference along the way and help each one of them as we can. So a little bit about FIATech to give you some context. It's an organization that's aimed at implementing technology. So in the capital projects industry, we have lots of technology, lots emerging. It's very slow to get implemented. The construction industry has, by some measures, had a continued decline in productivity over the last 30 years, has had the least amount of productivity growth compared to other in the industry. We're very slow to adopt new technology. I'm keen to see technology advanced and see the industry I've devoted my career to change and improve, and FIATech's an organization that is helping to do that, to develop, demonstrate, and deploy new emerging and innovative technologies that advance the life cycle of projects. And we do that by doing demonstration projects. We do it by partnerships with other organizations. We do technology exchange and information forums. And we've developed a capital project technology roadmap. Some of you may have seen this. And the 5 boxes across are the steps in doing projects, and the horizontal bars are common elements in which projects are accomplished. We developed it maybe 8 years ago, and we are developing strategy and tactics to advancing that and implementing technology. I've put forward that maybe we need a 6th box going across there that's legacy, that says what happens after operation and maintenance. Have kind of a mixed view of that. There's some that feel, well, you shouldn't wait till the end to think about what you're doing. Sustainability should be embedded in everything. So right now we are working on embedding sustainability in everything. I think maybe the legacy idea has merit also. On capital projects, triple bottom lines come up today, and I think the concept of planet, people, profits is really another way of saying environmental, social, economic. And so a tool that's used on projects, it was used on the London Olympics. I've used it on a lot of projects. Building a triple bottom line early and carrying it through your project is a really powerful way to drive sustainability concepts. So I'm going to quickly highlight each of the steps across my 5 boxes there of what can you do in sustainability, and you need to start at the beginning and follow through. I spoke at my granddaughter's 3rd grade class last year on sustainability, and I asked them, what is sustainability? It's a question I like to ask a lot of groups, but I think all of you are very knowledgeable on it, even though you might think of it differently. And they said it was reduce, reuse, recycle. And I thought, well, for a bunch of 3rd graders, that's a really good start, isn't it? There could be more R's, could be replaced, could be other R's in there, but a really good start. So you need a vision early on. You need to set some objectives on sustainability that you're going to carry forward, and major programs, major projects do that now. The London Olympics did it. They said they're going to have the most sustainable World Games event ever held, and they put it in their bid, they carried it forward, and they did follow through. I thought at first, though, it was just not a very high bar, because every World Games I looked at thought about sustainability and then got worried about money and time and the feel of their facilities, and they gave up on it. So the London Olympics did not give up on it, but setting a vision first is very important. You need some measurement system to do that, and you need a lot of discussion today on the systems thinking approach. So here's a book I read this year. I recommend this book. It's got an irresistible title, right? Cat monkeys, dinosaur babies, and T-shaped people. Who could resist that? That's probably why I bought it, but I bought it because it was about design thinking, creativity, and innovation, which is an area of high interest to me. It turns out it's got a lot in it about sustainability, too, so I wouldn't say it's the most impactful book you'll ever read, but it's absolutely full of nuggets of ideas and good perspectives. So some things on it talks about creativity, innovation. We also have some social obligations of designers. There's a good notion. And sustainability. And they talk about eliminating the concept of waste. So go forward with the understanding that waste does not exist. It's a lot bolder step and a lot more powerful than cradle to cradle. So really, waste should not exist. Everything we use came from something, and we ought to find some use of it when it's done. So it's not cradle to cradle. It's not put it back where it came from. It's put it into continued use. That waste does not have to exist. And think about the idea of reverse logistics. So what happens to stuff later? And what do you do with all the, what do you do with everything that comes along with your stuff? So after the London Olympics, I worked on the Masdar program in the United Arab Emirates. Somebody might be familiar with that. It was about a $24 billion program. I was program director for a year, lived in Abu Dhabi. And it had an objective to have a zero carbon community, a community where you could live with zero carbon footprint. It was very forward thinking. If anybody could afford to do this, the Emiratis could. And we were doing some very far out thing in sustainability and green building. And we thought about reverse logistics on all the materials that came to the city after it was built, but also during construction. So we built into our construction documents that anything you shipped to our site, you had to take all the packing material back with you. So there's a huge amount of waste generated on construction sites, and it certainly changes the viewpoint of the suppliers if they take all the packing material back. So first they want to bring material that can be unpacked when it arrives, because they don't want to come back a second time to pick up their packing material or pay for you to ship it to them. And then they're thinking, well, if I have to bring it back, can I reuse it? And you know, what if that led to a concept where we now have transit centers? What if we had like materials centers where we stationed packing material? So instead of taking packing material and putting it into a landfill somewhere, or could it be put into a waste energy? What if we just shipped it somewhere the transit companies could reuse it? It certainly has value. It shouldn't go into our landfills. The Cad Monkeys book also has examples of how materials might be reused. They reference Shaw carpeting as one that was forward thinking in having return of materials, but there are a lot of others out there. So what happens to desks and chairs and lights and anything else when you get it done with it? They discuss the challenge of designing for forever, so that you are designing with a sustainable view. And Bruce Mao, if you're familiar with him, his Massive Change exhibit, and you can go search for that on the internet, really powerful ideas around sustainability. And I didn't write this one down, but they said, well, what would a designer do when they think about, how could you design light bulbs better? And the comment they made was, the first thing a designer would do is think about, why do we need a light bulb? And so sustainable thinking will drive you into those kinds of viewpoints. In England, they have a civil engineering and environmental quality assessment and award scheme called SEQUEL. So they follow LEED. They have an agency-like LEED called BREEAM. It has very similar methodology to it. They debated whether BREEAM came first or LEED came first. Of course, I'm an American. I thought LEED came first, but we used BREEAM, had very similar criteria. But we use this also, SEQUEL, and I've talked with ASCE here. ASCE is developing a program, something like SEQUEL, that will be really good for us. In the UK, it's run by the Institute of Civil Engineers. It's a really powerful tool around project-based sustainability and environmental practices. So I'd encourage you to go search for this. I don't think I put the checklist on there, but it's just full of great checklist to look at. How can you be more sustainable on your site? So it's sort of a complement to what LEED does. It's more, LEED has site elements to it, but it's very building focused. And I believe we very soon will have one from ASCE. I know some people that are working on it, some colleagues of mine and not, and it'll be really good for us in the U.S. Oh, here's the criteria that they have under the SEQUEL assessment system, so around the project. And the London Olympics is finishing the Olympic Park that I led the design on. It's almost done. It'll be done this summer. So they set a goal to finish a year early and stay within their budget, and they are finishing a year early and staying within their budget. That's part of the reason why they are following their sustainability practices, because the rest of the project delivery stayed on track. So next, after design, is procurement. And procurement, I think, has got not near enough attention in the sustainability practice field. It is where a lot of sustainability practices are determined. So you think of sustainability, a lot of attention around energy, sort of awareness. We're not paying enough attention probably on water, but materials and resources, the kind of other big element where there's huge opportunity for us, and we're consuming resources, and I ran out of time, I need another couple minutes. We're consuming resources at a non-replenishable rate and non-renewable resources in the country, in the world. And so we need to follow a model through procurement which encourages us to go back and look at how resources are used. On the MOSDAR program, we said we're going to track our carbon footprint through the whole supply chain on procurement. So went out and said, can we get steel that's got 50% recycled content in it in the Mideast? And you could not anywhere. So the main suppliers were from India and Turkey. We went to the steel mills in Turkey and said, can we get steel that's 50% recycled material? And they said, oh, sure, we got a lot of steel we don't know what to do with. It's spent, and you can reuse it, and there'll be no extra cost for it. I thought we should ask for a price deduction. The Arabs probably would have. And then we wanted all of our building flashing, building miscellaneous metals to come 100% recycled materials. There was no recycled materials in any building metals in the Mideast. So we went to the suppliers for that, and they said, "Oh, sure, we get a lot. We can recover material from other sites. You can get 100% recycled material. There'll be no extra cost for that." So just some big examples of reusing a material. If we as designers would go asking for it, and it doesn't all cost more money. So some other thinking about sustainability is very systems thinking. It's the systems of systems thinking. It's a very broad range. It means we need to change. It means we need to practice different and better. We need to take some more personal responsibility about what we do and ownership for that. And we need to go tell owners they can have this. In many cases, it doesn't cost them more money, but it does mean a different practice. And there are a lot of owners out there that want it but don't know how to ask for it. And then the last piece is construction. I got two pieces: construction. A couple of examples in construction. Underlooked area, some good reference books there. Underlooked area of how much we can do in terms of how materials are managed, how we run those sites. And I'm going to skim through the last couple. Operations and maintenance. So there's been a lot of discussion on that earlier today. So we all need a personal ownership of that, of thinking of how we use power, how we use lights, how we use air conditioning and heating, what we do with resources and materials, how we can recycle things or avoid using them in the first place. Bioregional, strong proponent of sustainability, have an area called the Bedford Zero Energy Demand Zone, BEDZ, out of London. If you're in London and you choose to go somewhere other than Buckingham Palace or Hampton Court, you might go out to BEDZ and look at a really forward progressive community on driving to live at a zero energy demand and a low carbon footprint. They're the group that leads the One Planet Living measurement system. Buildings are a big consumer. We need to think differently about how we create buildings, build them, design them, operate them, live in them, work in them. Big consumers for us, and this is a U.S.-based information from the U.S. Green Building Council. So coming to a summary, so I gave examples through the project life cycle of how we can do things throughout that change our practices, change how we do things, don't all have to add more money. I wanted to quickly speak to measurement also. I'm 4 minutes over, but I think measurement is very important. Measurement was a part of how London's Olympics been successful, a big part of what we were doing on the Masdar Green City. But it's how we use that measurement, because measurement alone is not enough. There's a good book out by Mark Graham Brown on keeping score. It's a lot around Baldrige criteria for businesses, but a lot of information on measurement. And he has an example that, well, if measurement was enough, then everyone who has a bathroom scale would be fit and trim. Now, I own a bathroom scale. I'm not fit and trim enough, so it must be more than that. But if you watch like the TV program about the weight losers. Well, they're losing weight not just because they've got a scale, but they have public measurement. They've got a trainer. They're committed to it. They've drawn some passion around it. They've got some help accomplishing it. You know, a lot of things surrounding it. So measurement is an important thing, but it won't be enough. We've got to do other things, and as designers, practitioners, we have to help drive that. So that's it. I ran 5 minutes over. Sorry for that.